How's it going, people? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to a video on 10 cheap hot hatchbacks for under £2,000. Now, in last week's video on cheap hot hatchbacks for under £5,000, I said that if you guys got me to 1,000 likes on that video, I would make this one. And honestly, I kind of wish I didn't. This was a very difficult video to make because cars under £2,000 are inherently often not hot hatches. So I have found the hottest hatches that you can buy for under £2,000, even if they're not necessarily hot hatches by today's definition. That's not to take away from these cars though, because all of them are pretty quick and all of them are pretty nice in terms of handling or performance, or they've got something interesting about them. And as this video was so difficult to make, I would appreciate more likes. If you guys give me 1,000 likes, I'd really appreciate it again. And also, look, it's literally made me grow all this rubbish facial hair and stuff. Like, it's crazy. That's how hard I have worked to find the 10 cars that fit into this video. Remember that I'm in the UK, so prices in other countries may differ. And remember that whenever you buy any second-hand car, maintenance, repairs, insurance is super important to remember, particularly when you buy ones for under £2,000. All of these cars are pretty old. They've got quite high mileage. Yeah, I would probably suggest spending a bit more money. If you enjoyed the video and you're new here, hit the subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. But without further ado, let's get into the video. Starting us off at number 10, we have the first generation Ford Fiesta ST, which was actually based on the 5th generation Fiesta. It has a 2-litre inline-4 engine in its relatively small frame, which puts out 147 brake horsepower, taking it from 0 to 60 in 7.9 seconds. Though there was an RS concept car, the ST was basically the top of the line Fiesta you could get in this generation, back in the mid-2000s. It came with disc brakes all around behind those 17-inch alloys, a sportier body kit overall, and some nice ST badging throughout, just in case you forgot which spec you bought. I personally would go for the option with full leather heated seats too, as they're pretty nice. The idea by Ford was to make a Super Mini for younger fast Ford fans, and the car lends itself nicely to a bit of modification if you're that way inclined. The key party piece is the handling, as the car is so light it can really be thrown into corners, just as a hot hatch should. I actually think these will continue to age well and be a classic in the future. The lowest I could find these listed for is around £1,300, and for £2,000 you're looking at around the 90 to 100,000 miles mark. Reliability isn't horrendous on these, but worth checking the timing chain tension, and if there's rough running, the throttle body probably needs cleaning. There are horror stories about the gearboxes, but if maintained correctly you'll probably be okay. Airbag lights can also come on and be an issue, and they're known to get rust on the rear wheel arches. Next up is one of my favourite looking cars on this list, the Alfa Romeo MiTo, specifically with the 1.4 litre turbocharged inline-4 engine, which puts out 155 brake horsepower and manages 0 to 60 in 7.7 seconds. Not as quick or powerful as the QV, but it's the best you can manage for under 2k. The coolest thing about this car, other than its pretty looks, is the Alfa DNA system, which enables you to choose different driving settings for the car, which is unreal for a Super Mini that you can buy for this kind of money. In Veloce and Lusso spec, it looks reasonably sporty too, with nice alloys on the Veloce in particular. It's actually only marginally slower than the QV2, just 0.4 seconds slower to 60 with 13 brake horsepower less. It was designed by the same man responsible for the interior of the 8C, Juan Manuel Diaz, who also signed off on the exterior for the Giulietta. In his MiTo design, he tried to bring in some of the 8C's design philosophy, which got the board gassed enough to produce the car. £1,600 is around the minimum you'll find these listed for, and at £2,000 you'll still be looking at around 100,000 miles. I'd probably keep saving and get a QV, particularly if you're a young driver, as I've proven you can actually get insured on them at 17 relatively cheaply. They're not unreliable, but there are numerous different types of problems that have been experienced by owners, like timing chain issues, transmission leaks, and power steering and gearbox failures, so do be wary of these. In 8th is the Vauxhall Corsa SRI from the D generation, which has a 1.6 litre turbocharged inline-4 engine that puts out 147 brake horsepower and takes the car from 0 to 60 in 7.6 seconds. I was going to include the Astra SRI in this video by the way, but it's marginally slower due to its size and weight. Strangely, the car sits on the same basic platform as the Fiat Grande Punto, and it comes as either a 3 or 5 door, but I personally would recommend the 3 door simply because I think it looks better. If you can't afford the sportier VXR, the SRI is basically the next best thing, benefiting from a sporty body kit and 17-inch alloys, but also some performance features like sport suspension. The goal was also to make a car that would be cheaper on insurance than the VXR, but still provide a bit of performance and poise. The interior is also slightly uprated over the standard Corsas. Basically, this is the perfect middle ground between an actually hot VXR and the normal Corsa. Let's call it tepid. The lowest I could find these listed for is £1,700, and for £2,000 you're looking at a 2008 model with around 80,000 miles on it. Some key problems to look out for include juddering from the steering column and also from the clutch pedal. Radiators are also known to leak, and the aircon has been known to fail too. In 7th we have the BMW 120D, which from a diesel perspective is as close as you'll get to the 123D for under £2,000. It has a 2-litre turbo diesel inline-4 engine which creates 174 brake horsepower and will get the car to 60 in 7.3 seconds. In my last video on hot hatches under £5,000, I spoke about the 130i, which is practically the same car just with a different engine. Again, it comes as a 3 or a 5 door, and I personally prefer it with the 3, and in M Sport spec it looks pretty sporty too, with some slight aesthetic differences over the non-M Sport. It was also the 4th quickest of the 1 series behind the 135i, 130i and 123D, so though yes, it's not super hot, it's still quicker than many others in the lineup, and has the same engine as the 123D anyway, so a remap will get you more power out of it pretty easily. With very high miles, these are listed for as little as £1,000, but you're still looking at high miles for £2,000. The horror story problems on these are the chain tensioner failures and the high pressure fuel pump going wrong. Owners on forums generally suggest looking at petrol engined 1 series instead for greater peace of mind. Next up is a car I've wanted to feature for ages, the Mitsubishi Colt Ralliart Special Edition, which is a 1.5 litre turbocharged inline-4 which puts out 147 brake horsepower and will do 0 to 60 in 7.2 seconds. Now it doesn't have to be a Ralliart Special Edition, you could go for a CZT instead, but either way you get a sportier version of the Colt which features a stiffer chassis and suspension setup, slightly improved exhaust and sportier interior too, although I'm not going to lie, it is much more basic in there than most of the other cars on this list. This car was named by some journalists as being an entry-level Evo for the hatchback market, and while I think that might be a bit of an overstatement, owners absolutely rave about the car's handling, responsiveness and engine performance. I do think the Ralliart in particular is quite a good looking car, and there's only around 350 of them on the roads here in the UK, so they are pretty rare. As a result of that, you won't find many of them on sale, but for under £2,000 you might get one with around 90 to 100,000 miles on the clock. Test gears 1 to 3 in particular, as these can get crunchy if abused. Some owners have noted the engine management light coming on but switching off if they restart the car, and some have had issues with clutches. It's hard to find much more on reliability though, as it's such a rare car. If you're enjoying the video, as a reminder, please help this video get to 1,000 likes, I'd really appreciate it, and if you're not already subscribed, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Again, massively appreciated. I just hit 75,000 subscribers, massive thank you to you guys for it. Means that we're very much on track to achieve 100,000 by the end of the year, and I would really like to do that, so if you guys could help me in any way, hit the subscribe button, and let me know in the comments down below as well any topics that you'd like me to do in the next list video. A regular in my list videos at this point, in 5th it's the R53 Mini Cooper S with its 1.6 litre supercharged inline-4 which puts out 170 brake horsepower which takes the car from 0 to 60 in 7 seconds, starting to get a little more hot on this list now. This was the first generation of the new Mini under BMW's ownership, and many Mini owners will tell you the R53 Cooper S is better to go for than the R56 when it comes to reliability, particularly post facelift examples from 2004 onwards, as the supercharger was upgraded to be stronger and the interior is better built too. I would say the car has aged well in terms of looks, and it's absolutely raved about by journalists as one of the best cars you can get for under £2,000 in terms of driving experience, with many people calling it a go-kart for the roads. Having driven one a long time ago, it does actually handle very well, particularly if you get one with the optional LSD, and it's reasonably punchy on pace. £1,300 is the lowest I could find these listed for, and at £2,000 you'll find them with around 100,000 miles on the clock. I would just note that the ride is pretty stiff, rust has reared its ugly head on many of them, and there are other known issues with cracked cylinder heads, oil leaks, engine mount cracks, steering pump failures and drive shaft crunching. In 4th is the Peugeot 207 GTI, which picked up where the 206 GTI left off, with its 1.6 litre turbocharged inline-4 which puts out 172 brake horsepower, taking the car from 0 to 60 in 6.9 seconds. It was of course the successor to the 206 and was built on a modified version of the Citroën C3's platform. Unfortunately, it also shares that engine with the R56 Mini, so those of you who know about the problems that engine has will probably be writhing around in agony already at the thought. It's known for having a firm ride thanks to sport suspension, and aesthetically it has some subtle sporty upgrades over the standard 207 like the spoiler, alloys, trim and dual exit exhaust. That troublesome engine, when it works, does provide good boost from the low end, but the car does have electric steering, which some complain is a bit unsatisfying in terms of road feel. My favourite thing is surprisingly the interior, as if you manage to get one with proper sports seats, they're pretty sick. These are only just available at the £2,000 mark, which is interesting as the 206 GTI has started to go back up in value and is now more expensive at the lower end. But as mentioned, the engine is the scary part. It's the timing chain more specifically, and once it slips, it's time for a new engine. On to the top 3 now, and in third we have another of my personal favourites, the Renault Clio Renault Sport 182, which has a 2-litre inline-4 putting out 182 brake horsepower as it says in the name, which gets the car from 0 to 60 in 6.9 seconds. These are a ton of fun to drive and prolific on track days. Whenever I've been to a track day, you always see at least a couple of them running around pretty quickly. The handling is predictable, and if you can get one with the optional cup suspension, you won't necessarily have to think about upgrading the suspension later on. Although if you did fancy upgrading, the Bilstein B14s are known to be pretty good. The problem is these are starting to become increasingly sought after as a bit of a classic, so if you're after one as a cheap hot hatch or a track day weapon, you might need to be quick about it. The lowest I could find one of these listed for is £1,500, and you're looking at around 70,000 miles on the clock depending on the condition of the car. On reliability, they're actually known to be pretty good, with owners noticing that if they're well maintained and the cam belt is changed regularly, they'll keep running. Key problems to look out for are the rattling inlet cam timing variator, oil leaks, and the synchros between second and third gear. In second, it's the Audi A3 S-Line TFSI, which would take the top spot in its Quattro spec, but unfortunately that's out of reach for the minuscule price range in this video, so we have to go with the front wheel drive version that does 0 to 60 in 6.9 seconds too, thanks to its 2-litre turbocharged inline-4 and 197 brake horsepower figure. So it has around 60 horsepower less than the S3, and it isn't all-wheel drive, and therefore is 1.5 seconds slower to 60, but it costs less than half the price of the cheapest S3 on the market, so if money is a problem, this is about as close as you'll get with an Audi badge. It actually arrived before the S3 as an initial sports model alongside the VR6, so at the time it was the second quickest in the lineup, even if it is now slower than both the S3 and the RS3 as well. In S-Line trim it gains a slightly more aggressive look both outside and in, and it comes as either a manual or S-tronic automatic. The lowest you'll find these listed for is £2,000 though, so you are looking at the dregs for this kind of money. From what I can see on forums, a lot of owners are very positive about the longevity of the 2-litre TFSI engine, which is good news. That said, the same block in different guises has been harassed by consumer reports as being unreliable, and running into problems between 107 and 150,000 miles specifically. Taking the top spot is another VW Group car, the Mark IV Golf VR6, which is a nice alternative to both the R32 and the GTI. It has a 2.8-litre VR6 putting out 204 brake horsepower, which gets from 0 to 60 in 6.9 seconds too. It does feel like, minus a few random outliers, the fastest and most common hatches available under £2,000 will do 0 to 60 in 6.9 and no quicker unless modified. Other than the R32, the Mark IV Golf has often been considered as an ugly duckling of the lot, but I think the VR6 benefits from being rare enough that other car enthusiasts might actually look twice. Interestingly though, owners and reviewers consider the experience to be more along Grand Tourer vibes than hot hatch, as because of that larger engine and all-wheel drive layout, it's actually a solid cruiser. What's strange is that it's badged as a V6 despite that engine being a VR6, which is an important distinction as it's lighter and smaller, fitting better into a car of the Golf's size. Like the A3, £2,000 is the minimum I could find these listed for, and it's around 100,000 miles for that kind of money. Coil packs are a complaint on these, although in general the engines are known to be quite durable, but do look at the Haldex service record to make sure it's on schedule, as that can be an expensive fix. So I hope you enjoyed this video or learned something new. If you did, remember to hit the like button, I'd really appreciate it, and subscribe as well if you're new. Massive thanks to the patrons as always, and to you guys as well for watching. I'll see you in the next one.